Elvin, Simon, and Theodore are warming up on the wheel. Good morning, fellow directors. We are live. So with that, just a reminder about our electronic devices, if we can keep them on mute, please. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge with gratitude that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Quw'utsun, Malahat, Subasset, Halalt, Penelakut, Snuneymuxw, Liaxin, Pakwitchin, Dididot, and Pachidot nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. And also I'd like to welcome alternate director Duncan to the meeting today. Welcome, sir. With that, Mr. Robbins, shall we move on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just getting my bearing here as well. As you were in recess, we're moving on through your agenda. There are no minutes to be adopted. Obviously no business arising. We don't have anybody here in the boardroom nor online that would like to participate in public input period. We have regrets from your delegation from Snuneymuxw First Nation. Unfortunately, they're not able to be with you here this morning. And so we'll move right on to staff reports because there is no correspondence or information. Which brings you to the report from Facilities and Transit Division with regards to the Nanaimo Cowichan Express new bus stop request at Oyster Bay. And there is a recommendation before you.
Chair Stone.
Thank you, and if I could, I'd like to move the recommendation with the change to the wording just to remove community partnership so that it's just say a 3-year transit agreement with Snuneymuxw First Nation. And then if I get a seconder, I'd like to speak to it.
Many seconders, so please carry on.
Thank you. I just want to give thanks to our staff and also staff and leadership at Snuneymuxw for doing this work together to get it to this point. I think that this is, an important initiative, and I think that as we work on working with the nations throughout the region, hopefully we can emulate this work and continue to bring transit service. On a practical level, I think it'll result in more cost recovery. It'll be more benefit to the entire region as a whole, make the service more cost effective. But more importantly, I think it provides the opportunity and equity that we seek to have in the region, providing greater opportunity for both education and work, as well as access to services. For those who aren't aware, in the northern part of the regional district, many services are provided through Nanaimo, whether they be health-related services, supports and education opportunities, as well as, of course, many work opportunities. Having that access to the transit system will not only connect all of our communities throughout Cowichan and connect Snuneymuxw to Ladysmith and all communities south.
I'm not sure if the meeting started, but there's no audio.
Thank you.
Hopefully there's audio on YouTube, but I'm assuming there's not either. I'm not going to start over because virtue is only to be said once. But I just think it's a really important initiative for the region. It's a win on all sides, and I hope that we can emulate this kind of work, working with all the nations throughout the region. So I'm happy to support it. And I look forward to, the service expanding as we move forward. I do have one question/concern to staff and maybe a potential solution. So if I may, I understand that the stop that will be used will be behind the Oyster Bay development where the A&W is. Totally makes absolute sense. It's almost like there's a ready-made bus corridor there with easy access off and back onto the highway. I understand they're using the controlled intersection coming south, and while I understand that and support that in the near term, there is opportunity on the other side of the highway for an easy turnaround. If you go into the new Owls Hollow development, which is only seconds off of the highway, there's a large roundabout there. I'm not sure if the bus could circulate around that. But the concern is that there have been a number of serious accidents at that controlled intersection coming southbound. And although I understand that, yes, buses make controlled left turns all the time, there seems to be a particularly high number of serious vehicular accidents at that intersection in particular. So I would like over time to investigate the opportunity for another stop on the west side of the highway rather than going across, because there is an easy off and on, including an acceleration and deceleration lanes going southbound on the highway. And I believe that with a little creative planning, there are turnaround opportunities within that side, the west side of the Oyster Bay development. So hopefully we can look at that in the future, but happy to support the service as it's laid out from here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wakeham, respond to that? Or I seen you writing feverishly. I'm sure you've taken that down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, appreciate the comments by Director Stone. I know that the team, which was BCT and the RDN and us, we looked at 3 different locations. And so this was the one that was deemed the best at this point, but we'll definitely take up your comments with the group when we meet next as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Stone. Further discussion? There's a motion on the floor. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. It's unfortunate that Ms. Wilson could not join us. It would have been nice to have that presentation in person, but we have the correspondence, etc. We've made our decision, and moving forward, Mr. Robbins.
Thank you. Moving to R2, the report from the General Manager, Community Services Department with regards to Active Communities grant funding for physical literacy. There's a recommendation, and lo and behold, our GM.
Mr. Elzinga, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate being here. Good morning to the committee. This request is for a grant application to support our physical literacy steering committee table. This initiative has 10 years plus now. It started with an original RBC grant for $25,000. We had the opportunity to apply for a grant for a specific program, or we could apply for some community development, and we chose the $25,000 community development grant at that time. We've had partners from the school district, Cowichan Tribes, the municipalities, and the regional district as core participants in the steering committee, and a number of others that have participated over the years. We're very proud of the achievements that are in the report, including most recently the coaches mentoring program in schools. We identified a bit of a gap with elementary school teachers not having specific physical education training, and so we have facilitated coaches in our community going into schools to assist teachers with specific PE training. So it has been a multi-sector program. It has been funded 3 times by grants and occasionally within interior budgets. This is an opportunity that has come forward for a $50,000 grant to support the initiative.
Thank you very much. I have Chair Stone. I'll call you Director Stone in this meeting.
Yeah, I was going to correct you, Mr. Chair, but
That's Director McGowan.
I would move the recommendation first of all, and then if I get a seconder, just a short speech.
I have a mover and a seconder. Let's have the speech.
I just want to say, good report, great initiative. It's made a lot of difference in communities, including the initiatives that are outlined in the report, so just happy to support it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? You're being very easy on me. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries.
You've had some tough meetings lately, Mr. Chair, so we're
We
just
will
trying
have some
to
tougher
lighten it
ones
up
in the
for you.
future, I'm sure. Mr. Robbins, please.
Thank you. This moves to R3, report from Patrick Robbins, the Corporate Officer, Legislative Services, with regards to Governance Committee terms of reference, membership, and scheduling.
Thank you. I'll turn to Patrick Robbins for that report, please.
I feel compelled to go stand at the podium, but I'm so comfortable in my seat. I can speak to it from here if you wouldn't mind.
Please do.
The recommendations for direction, but it's more direction and information. We understand the desire and the need to move forward with governance committee agenda items, and also turning our mind to the accessibility committee. We, of course, are challenged anytime we add new things on the docket, then we are challenged with actually being able to effectively provide the support to those committees. If you recall the current terms of reference, for instance, the governance committee, it did have a sunset clause. Embarrassingly or not, we were supposed to have gotten through work by the end of February of 2023. That being said, we sort of put it a bit of an idea of what we could achieve in terms of supporting by providing you some timeframes. And I realize that that is a long and probably undesirable timeframe to tackle some of the important items in the governance committee, let alone turning our minds to bringing the volunteers that have been appointed to the accessibility committee. And that all really, it just comes down to being able to support it with some capacity. Keeping in mind that there is a subject of supplemental in your budget, and to the extent that that would make it through the final budget process and onto your financial plan, this timeline would change dramatically. Barring that, we also have indicated that perhaps we need to go back and look at the business, for instance, the governance committee, to see if the committee of the whole might take that on if you're wanting to do the work sooner than later. I'm sorry that it doesn't provide you with what probably is what you'd like to see and expected, and to get to the business of the governance committee and the accessibility committee. But again, we're just challenged with being able to resource it.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. I have Director Stone and then Director Segal.
I'll let Director Segal speak first if she likes. I just wanted to raise first the conversation around membership as well. I think it should be a full board committee, and if we can adjust the schedule to allow it to be on our regular meeting days, I think that would be appropriate. But I'll let Director Segal go, and then I have other comments.
Thank you. I'll come back to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to get some clarity from Mr. Robbins on a frequency of meetings. Are we talking monthly, one a month? Are we talking one every 2 or 3 months?
Through the chair, if it was resourced, with which we had requested in terms of providing some horsepower, we're a little more flexible in terms of scheduling. And so based upon the volume of work that comes, and probably how active the committee is and how seeing how they're able to advance, we may be able to provide timing similar to what the EA directors meet and or the committee of the whole and the board. And so the frequencies will be based upon that. In the short term, perhaps, is that, and that's why we indicated the timing, depending on how busy a topic becomes and what is needed, not only to help you administer the meeting, but also provide you with the background or research or staff reports, will also dictate how quickly we can get through it. So if you have a topic that has multiple layers that require lots of research and lots of reports, that would mean that it would be over a number of successive months probably versus weeks.
Follow up?
So yeah, then I guess I'd just like to say for the committee that I've been on a deep dive on what governance means, and I think that there's a lot that we can talk about and ways that we can improve our governance. So just to keep that in mind when it comes to budget supplementals. I also support what Director Stone brought up about having everyone a member of the governance committee. In terms of meeting timings, though, for me, I would really prefer governance meetings to be on the mornings of EASC Wednesdays, just because that dedicates at least time availability. But I don't know if that really works for our municipal partners. I personally found those days last year where we had governance and then committee of the whole and then board just a bit much. But that's just my feelings around the date.
Mr.
Yes, Mr. Robbins.
I just was also reminded that, speaking to the frequency, that when we put the calendar together at the beginning of the year, or at the end of last year for this year, we did indicate that it was monthly, with the first two have started on February 7th, then one in March, April, May, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Chair, Director Stone, sorry.
Yeah, so notwithstanding the things that were just brought up by Director Segal's comments, I don't know if that other Wednesday, I think, is maybe challenging for some of the municipal partners, but we can put a pin in that. I did want to highlight, though, in the report, it talks about roles and responsibilities of board and vice chair. Actually, it was board and committee chairs as well as vice chairs, because the ESC chair in particular, as well as committee of the whole chair, shoulder additional responsibilities. And I think that those roles and responsibilities need to be more defined as well. I think in some of these, the committee work will be initiated based on kind of like old-fashioned committee work, which is the meeting policies and procedures start with a meeting where the existing policies and procedures are put forward, and the committee can discuss it in a sort of more relaxed and open fashion, and then make some recommendations on how we'd either like to tighten it up or broaden the scope or whatever those policies and procedures are. I feel we've stumbled in a number of meeting situations over the last year or so, and longer. I think the public inputs period and the lack of clarity around that in particular. And there's good reasons for tightening up those policies and procedures to make the meetings run better. But I'm also thoughtful to the idea of sort of opening up the way that we do governance, as Director Segal said, but also recognizing that when you do that, the process takes much longer, and you may have to go through sort of an iterative process when you make maybe more unconventional, potentially changes to the way that you run and do your business. I have become, as not unknown, a pretty big fan of tight, regulated meetings, not to stifle debate or discussion, but to provide what I see as good and reliable process that can stand up to challenge if that were to come forward. And that there's always room within a well-run, tight meeting, if folks know and understand how to use a good, tight legislative process to bring points forward and to govern effectively. So that being said, I think that, it's just important to note that the roles and responsibilities, I think, would trickle down to every member of the board, but particularly the board and committee chairs and vice chairs. And then that based on the sort of building the foundation of policies and procedures, then the roles and responsibilities of the people that lead the meetings, and then the sort of remuneration piece is really important because the municipal, and we did some work with the EA directors, and that was a struggle, no doubt. But the municipal counterparts, I've seen a dramatic increase in the workload for municipal members of this board, and that compensation piece hasn't been addressed since I've been on this board. So I think that's an important discussion as well as recognizing the stress and additional load. We just saw another item on our board agenda this week that electoral area directors and the chair of the electoral area committee were sort of reached out to with media. So again, when you understand the roles of each committee chair, board chair, and vice chair, reflecting that in a proper compensation. So empower those people to take on that extra responsibility, but also that it deserves recognition and compensation. So I think the general idea here is good, just a few little gaps that I'd like to see filled.
Thank you very much. I have Director Morrison next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Aaron covered a lot. I think I'll sort of go to a little different tact here. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly over the years. And I don't think I'll describe what this term has been like in maybe those terms, but I'd like to say that I think we've been lucky thus far this term. And we're getting along as a group. Things seem to be going relatively smoothly, but I'm going to agree with what Director Stone has shared about the well-run, tightly run meetings with guardrails and everyone being in a position where we know our roles and our responsibilities makes for efficient, well-run, and they're not nearly exhausting as the meetings as ones that digress a lot. So with that, I want to say that I'm really disappointed we didn't get to this work last year. I understand the time commitment that people are putting in, not just in the preparation for these meetings, but the actual time we're spent here. But I'm going to tell you that in previous terms, there were a heck of a lot more meetings, committee meetings, responsibilities where we had to be here, and it wasn't just on every Wednesday of the month. So I'm going to implore that we find time, or we do what's necessary to make this committee meeting on this Wednesday. If we can do a governance committee, committee of the whole, and board in a day, it fits everybody's schedules. It'll be a tough slog in some days, but it's really important that this work gets started. I was hoping we could have had a meeting today because we had a somewhat lighter schedule at committee of the whole. So I want to impress upon you the urgency. If this goes on, if the work of this committee goes on for the next 18 months, which it very easily could, we're well through our term. So this is important work. We need to be able to set the table not only for the end of this term, but for groups following us. With that, Aaron covered a lot of it. I'd like to see us get going, and I'll just end on the membership note. It's got to be all of us, in my view, and just taking the municipal director compensation question, we all have to be at the table. We all need to work through that, and I think we can. So I'm asking, find the time in your schedules. Let's get this going sooner than later, and let's get some of the work done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Robbins has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for contemplation and moving this forward, if you're interested in motions, is perhaps amending your terms of reference and the board meeting schedule to reflect our timelines that are in the report, subject to, of course, resourcing. And then that way we can modify the schedule that the board has had adopted back in November. The other thing, and I'm sort of taking a bit of a sidetrack, but I just wanted to remind of your new committee, the accessibility, which isn't the subject of this report, but for those that are at home and those that actually those great volunteers that you've appointed, we are trying to bring them together. And of course, the first meeting would certainly be to go over, some orientation. The great thing is that we do lots of orientation for PACs and APCs, and so we have resources for that. And to go over the terms of reference and just the roles and responsibilities, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention because it is yours, and once we get moving, they will generate work for us as well, I'm sure. But we haven't forgot about them, and they've been notified of their appointments, and we reached out to them and told them that we would likely reach back to them this month with some sort of direction as well.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. I have Director Deck next.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to express my gratitude to the staff who worked so hard already. And if there's no deadline and we can take as long as necessary to complete this task, I would like to I know all of you think this similarly about the staff. I would just like to always be aware of their capacity, and they already work so hard. So I'm prepared to work as hard as we can based on staff capacity. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And personally, I feel the importance of the governance committee as not just for this term, but for future terms, laying down the foundation of good governance and good policies to move forward for good government procedures. With that, I see Director Segal had her hand up.
Thank you. I'd like to move that amendment that Mr. Robbins mentioned.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, that was to alter the board schedule to align with the staff report and the timelines for covering off the subjects on the governance committee, subject to, of course, any potential resourcing in 2024.
So you are moving that?
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder, Chris Dash. Or Director Nicholson,
Can I have a follow-up?
please do.
I'm wondering also about moving this to a standing committee, as was mentioned in the report, since last year we tried to do it with a sunset clause, it just didn't happen. So if we finish it all in a year, that's amazing, and then we can end it.
And Mr. Chair, that could be a subsequent motion as well, and we can bring back terms of reference that will reflect some of the discussion today as well.
Director Stone,
Yeah, so the first motion's on the floor.
correct.
If we don't have any speakers to that, maybe we can vote on that and then move to the next.
Test the floor. Are you ready for the question? Director Nicholson, please. Director Nicholson and then Director Martman.
Maybe you could just read that motion again, please?
I will turn to Mr. Robbins.
Alter the board schedule to align with the staff report and the timelines for covering off the government.
We need you on a microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Just getting staff to reread that for us.
Okay. Alter the board schedule to
The amendment reads to alter the board schedule to align with the staff report and the timeline for covering off the governance committee subject to potential staffing resource implications.
Okay, Director Nicholson?
So I just need to understand what that means. So we're talking about February to July, would meeting policies and procedures? Is that the timeline we're talking about? Okay, thank you.
And I had Director Martman online.
Thank you, Chair. Same question, along the same, I just trying to understand how that lays out because it's not clear to me. So maybe explain what that looks like practically.
Mr. Robbins?
Mr. Chair, I'll try and answer that. I think that it is, it's sort of based upon the work that you're going to be doing and anything that arises when we bring a subject matter that you want to review will determine how quickly you can get through that item to go to the next item to get the next item. So it's a bit of iterative at this point in time, not only because of resourcing, but just because of how you will work through the material. If you recall last year, for instance, there was, and forgive me for not remembering this, Code of Conduct, that went over a series of 3 or 4 meetings, 3 meetings. And so depending on when you roll up your sleeves and how deep dive that you do in a subject would then dictate how quickly we can get through that. And that's why we just have a range of dates for you. The quicker you get through it, and subject to resourcing, we'll bring the next topic that's on your to-do list, et cetera, et cetera. And so back to the original point, your original meeting schedule had suggested the governance would meet monthly. And I think that based on our resourcing is just not going to be possible. And so that's why we have that date range in terms of the subject matters. Again, part of the report says that if you combine it to the meetings, then we can use some existing resources. But we need to, I think that's a bit of work that staff still needs to do. Granted, today, for instance, may have been a great opportunity because of the agenda. And so managing your agendas and the gaps that you might have in between them provides more opportunity for you to meet. And so again, it's a date range and a bit of a goalpost to show that we're not ignoring what you're wanting to do, but given the resources and your workloads, we want to be able to react to that as we move through the year. I'm not sure if that helped.
Follow up, Director Martman?
Yes, please. Yes, I guess I was looking for some, thank you very much. That does help. I think I was looking for a motion or direction that would be a bit more specific. I like the idea of moving through as we need, but I think we need to give it a little bit more, I don't know if Dr. Morrison uses the word guardrails or something that we can actually put some, say, we're going to meet on this on committee of the whole or the board every Wednesday, and I know from having a separate meeting with the governance last year, it was a challenge because you're always pushed up to have to end this one to start the next one. So anyways, I would be looking to have a bit more, I guess, reliability of timing of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I have Director Nicholson, Director Stone, and Director McClinton.
Thank you. This is an important topic to me. And you just have to bear with me here. I view governance, governance is about us and how we do our job. And I view it, there's sort of two aspects to it, and what we've been discussing primarily here is the sort of the structure and framework, policies, and how we get our job done in an efficient, clear, good way. But I would also say that this job, I find, is a lonely job. And I think we don't do ourselves good service by allowing ourselves to fall back on this framework of policies and procedures and need to be efficient and formal and all that kind of thing all the time. And particularly in committee work, where I think that's the time where we should be really working together. And so, and this is a good example. We're talking about a governance committee, yet we don't seem to be able to find the time to do the work, which is our work to make ourselves better. We're putting other stuff in front of that. And I just think we could do so much better if we spent some time having some good conversation about that excites and energizes us and develops a much more collaborative working relationship. And I would say that from my experience, and I remind you that I've been on the board now for 2 terms, and this is my 3rd. In that time, have had the pleasure of being a committee chair once for 1 year. And that was a great experience, and it really energized me because I had to pay a lot more attention and I had jobs to do, and I really enjoyed it. And I learned a lot. And I'm so disappointed that this is no disrespect to our appointed chairs for the committees. I am so disappointed that the opportunity for other people to learn hasn't been made available again this year. And it's like, and so then if you don't have that opportunity to contribute and be part of learning so that we are all much stronger, then we don't build that that energy and excitement and collaboration. And there is so much important work that we need to be doing. I find myself now just kind of sitting back and relaxing almost, and it's, which is not a good thing. And I'm just being completely candid with you. I am not satisfied that we are doing our best work. And from my perspective, the Governance Committee is a way to talk through that. And if we're not prepared to do that, then I will go back to my lonely job and focus on my Area E, which I don't think serves the region as a whole well. I will focus on my water. I've always got lots of water stuff to do. But I think there are some other really important issues we need to be working together on. And I'm finding it hard to find the way to do that effectively and efficiently. Okay, I'll stop.
Thank you, Director Nicholson. Please don't feel lonely. You are among friends. Did I have Director Justice? Did you have your hand up? No? I guess you were just scratching your... Thanks, Professor. I do have Director Stone and then Director McClinton.
I think I'll pass.
Director McClinton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to thank Director Nicholson for her heartfelt comments. My question to Mr. Robbins, just curious about this, I forget the term, like staffing this or resourcing this. Is it just right down to the limited hours, or if like we dedicated a different day for, you know, like is it to do with the Wednesdays, or is it just resourcing in general?
Mr. Chair, you'd best to speak to your own workloads, of course, and the days. It is really about just having physical staff available to do the work. As we always refer to our video as the hamster wheel, we're continually on the hamster wheel, as you can appreciate, every week. So every week we're doing at least 2 agendas, and so we're preparing agendas, then we're preparing minutes, then we're doing action lists, then we're doing follow-ups, and then as soon as we do that, we're doing that again for the following week. We just don't have the horsepower.
Yeah.
And that speaks to a big part of supporting it. I don't want to lose the fact as well, and the board probably is aware of this, all the other resourcing that comes from the staff to support it in terms of doing research, doing staff reports and that sort of thing. And so that anytime we build, and as you've heard, I sound like I'm on a soapbox, sorry, but as we build more and more and require more and more, then that puts the pressure on those that are providing the reports to you as well, and then what actions come out of it.
Follow up, if I may,
Can we just turn to our CAO for
Oh,
a
sure,
second
yeah.
for comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fully support everything Mr. Robbins just said, but I just wanted to expand on another thing in that the staffing support and the capacity to do research and thing is one, but we also are really mindful of your schedules and the packed agendas. It's a very much staff work very hard behind the scenes to put together and present these very meaty agendas for you, but also it takes you a lot of time on the back end to review everything and be prepared, and we recognize how much you're putting into this business. And so we also need to just reflect on the fact that we'll have to be very mindful of the length of your agendas when you have these governance committee days, and at agenda review being kind of ruthless with them and say, can this wait? And because, like, speaking to Director Nicholson's comments, you know, you have to take time to work on the business, not just in the business, right? And we're all kind of in that state where we know there's some house cleaning to do and some procedures and policies we need to update. So we'll just have to be kind of really specific about those agendas and looking at the time frame of each item and maybe slowing down on some things so you can take the time to do this important work.
Thank you very much. Follow up?
it might be a question for Ms. Wilson. Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, I agree that this is super important work. I think it was the only committee that I volunteered for last year. I was appointed to a couple, and it sounds like it is. I mean, and I know I'm for sure one of the loudest people, like, saying, you know, no more meetings during the week. But I mean, I would be in favor of a half day or more to bang out this super important work or dig into it, because I do find that stop starting is really challenging. You get in at 9:30, then you're done by 45 minutes later. You can barely touch on any of the issues. So me personally, I think if we can knock this stuff out before the summer, I think that serves us all really well. I don't know if that helps the staff, but I'd be in support of something like that.
Thank you. I have Director Toporowski and then Director Segal.
Thank you, Chair. So if this motion goes through, I noticed that we did get invitations starting in February. February 7th would be our first meeting for the governance meeting. And it's from 9:30 to 11. So I just went through the whole calendar to July. It fits in my calendar anyways. And I guess the discussion is, can we do that? And I do think that it is important to set aside the day for this, like February 7th. We can start moving through these dates once a month, because I think it's a good discussion that we need to have around this table on how we would like to see things moving forward in a good way. I think because we get to the table and we need to discuss something, but we don't feel like we have the time or the space to have those discussions about the particular governance models that we're working with and what we would like to see changed. Because there's gaps, there's things that are working well, and we just need to hash those out in a space that's open for those discussions. And also, you know, we're all at different stages of learning, so I'm happy to sit and watch Tim chair the meeting. But, you know, like, I think, but we had this happening at Couch and Tribes as well, when we're in committee meetings where people didn't want to be the chair of the committees, or, they did a rotating model for the fishing committee, which I found, like one of the directors just mentioned, excited about having that opportunity to chair a meeting. I didn't necessarily had to do it all the time, so when the chair wasn't there, they'd just call upon me, and then if I wasn't available, it would go to the next person. So if having that openness, but I guess this would be part of our discussion on February 7th. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds, but I think, again, this will be a safe space for us to express what we want and need from this table. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Segal, please.
Thank you. I hope this wraps it up. So the kind of underlying, we can't really know how this is going to play out unless we know what our budget is and how legislative services is supported in the budget. That's really important. So we take that into our supplementals discussion in 2 weeks. Yeah, I wanted to share why I'm so excited to chair this committee. We have such a wonderful, diverse group of perspectives here, right? We have different personalities. That's so important in a board, but we do need to figure out how to collaborate, how to work together, and how to find that collective understanding and agreement of how we govern and how that's laid out within those guardrails of our policies and procedures. So I really look forward to this. I hope that Legislative Services feels super supported so that we can move through this in a way that feels safe and good for our community.
And you will not wrap up. I have Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What concerns me, and I fully agree with everything that's been said, well, not everything, but 90% of what's been said here, and we do need good governance, etc. But what I'm afraid of here is some form of stifling of the things that come up. In any conversation, one thing leads to another. And I don't want to see any kind of stifling of that variety of the subjects or the subject content which comes up. And if we are too strict on what we can and cannot do, then it's not going to be a free-flowing conversation. It's going to be very stilted, very stifled, and I don't like that. I do believe in open conversation, but with control, of course, which I'm sure you're very good at anyway. So from that point of view, I want to just make sure that we're not too strict on this. We need to have open conversation and bring in that kind of variety, if you like. Thank you.
Well, I haven't had to cut the microphone off of you yet, so you are behaving yourself today. I appreciate that. Just to comment on the education piece that Director Nicholson brought up, I think it's important that everybody has an opportunity to chair. And in preamble discussions of reinstalling the governance committee, that was brought forward in the discussion of how we can have a co-chair model, for instance, for those that are appointed, and alternate that process of chairing. It probably gets long of the tooth listening to me all the time. Maybe we want to listen to an English accent once in a while, just to lighten things up. But I think the opportunity for education resides within the governance committee as we move forward to give everyone the opportunity to learn how to chair an appropriate meeting, whether you take it seriously or may have a little levity as I do. I think we take ourselves too seriously once in a while. You know, we are doing great work, but it's hard work. And we have to acknowledge that everybody here is here representing the people within their communities for the betterment of the whole regional district. That's my soapbox, Mr. Robbins. We do have a motion on the floor if we have no more speakers. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And I believe Director Stone or Segal. Director Segal, you had an amendment perhaps, or another motion?
Yeah, another motion. I'd like to move this to be a standing committee.
And seconded by Director Stone. Can you just refer to what the standing committee would reside?
I'm going to do that next. That's my motion. Or you can make it. Mr. Robbins, you can describe that.
I'm
Select is just the time-limited. Standing means that it's a committee that doesn't have a specific end date.
generally,
Okay,
that's the difference between.
As a parliamentarian of 98% quality, I think Chair Stone has helped you to 100%.
Thank you very much. Awesome.
Chair Stone, you did have something else, no? Okay, I'll call the question on that. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Now we're going to talk about membership. Chair Stone.
Yeah, I would move that all members of the board be members of the governance committee.
And seconded by Director Wilson. Further discussion on that is not needed, so you can challenge the chair if you wish. I'm calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Director Stone?
Yeah, so I want to be thoughtful. I think these are guardrails. And to be fair, I think the whole discussion around policies and procedures is supposed to illuminate some of the things that we've heard around the table, right? One of the things, though, I think we do need to talk about is education and workshops. And, you know, I had a little sidebar with Director Morrison, and one thing that I've noticed is a steep drop in is just that those opportunities for learning that are kind of less pressure cooked and more fun, right? They're not meeting focused, they're teamwork and being open about ideas and be able to have like a free exchange of conversation, not shaped by motions and things like that. So I don't think there's a motion to put forward here, but the governance committee, and I think Director Segal and working with staff and stuff, that we can hopefully bring those opportunities forward. And that might mean resourcing, AKA finances, to be able to pay consultants that might be good on certain subject matters to come in, or to have, you know, we joked with Mr. Robbins about having, you know, training sessions that aren't meetings, that are considered workshops, but having funny issues to debate and move and allow people to sit in the chair for that debate, but without the pressure of it being an actual consequential decision. So then that person, when they take the chair seat for a committee meeting or a board meeting, they feel comfortable in the process piece. Because I'll go back to, like, process shouldn't stifle, it should facilitate good conversation, right? And having good guardrails and good process should mean that the resulting decision is strong and protected. I just feel like we're in an environment now that feels really different than 2 terms ago. The issues are no more serious or no less serious than they were then, but they seem to be, there's just a lot of things that have changed, especially through the pandemic and since the pandemic. And maybe if we can find a way to sort of relax a little bit and drop our shoulders and feel more comfortable in our work environment, we can help share that with the public as well. Because I think the communities in a lot of different topics on a lot of different issues are on edge. And we consistently seem to be having conversations at these tables, whether it's our municipal governance tables, the Electoral Area Services Committee, that just feel like tense and more charged than they used to be. And of course, controversial issues come up all the time, but it just seems the volume of them is a lot higher now than it was. Director Douglas and I were just chatting during the break, and it says, does it feel like there's something controversial or tense on almost every meeting agenda? I know at our municipality it does. It used to be that those were the exception, not the rule, and now it seems like it's the rule, not the exception, because it seems like every issue that gets brought to our table offends at least a certain certain percentage of people, and they'll really let you know about it, right? So I think that, you know, circling back to Director Nicholson's points, I think it's important that we find the way to have more opportunities, not just at the meetings, but leading up to the meetings, so that when somebody takes that chair seat for that real meeting, that it feels comfortable, but we're also providing the tools necessary to make sure the decisions made in those meetings are solid and be able to sort of speak to them and uphold them when they inevitably may get challenged by one segment of the communities or another. So anyway, I just, all I want to say is I think that there's room for all of that. And I think that we do need to look for opportunities to have good dialogue that isn't sort of forced through a process lens, but then can lead to some thoughts that we can bring to a meeting where we make those decisions and change those policies and stuff. So I think it's a good start, you know, and I think that I have faith in Director Segal chairing the committee and stuff to like take the temperature. I don't know, I've worked with a lot of people who are more like open to hearing from, I'm trying to be better at it, to be open to hearing different ideas and take time to think about things and see the opportunity before sort of like falling back on my structured way of thinking about things. But Director Segal seems to be like more excited to be open and search out those new opportunities. So I just encourage all the board members to talk to Kate and say, hey, can we do this as part of the governance committee? And we'll work with staff to try and help make it a reality. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Director Robbins, Director, I have just demoted you. Mr. Robbins, have we voted on that motion?
I was just checking with staff. You have.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Mr. Robbins, I'll turn to you again, please.
I was just thinking maybe my epitaph should have 98 on it or something.
Absolutely, we can make a meme
Can we
for
pin that
that.
one? I like that. There's no one here in the gallery with question period. You have had your closed session, so a motion to adjourn.
I have many hands and many seconders, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Those opposed? Thank you very much for a better.
Who wants to chair board this afternoon?
Yeah,
Kate?
you're more than welcome for an education process.
If I step out, you guys can just elect a chair. I vote for
You
Jesse.
have a vice chair, sir, so that would be the
That's
natural policy to follow. Meeting,
Reminder, there is lunch at noon? 12:30. 11:30. Oh. It'll be here at 11.